and welcome to CNBC-TV18. I'm Malvika Jain. I have with me Professor Marco Iansiti, the head of Harvard Business School's Digital Initiative and the chairman of Keystone Strategy, Inc. Professor Iansiti, welcome to CNBC-TV18. My first question to you is that 2015 was the year of the unicorns. However, for the past 3 quarters, we've been seeing that the valuations have been coming down. Do you think this is a premonition for something that's about to happen?
I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good move by the markets to become more rational about valuations. And I think it's also an indication of the fact that right now people have more understanding, more expertise about what these companies are actually doing and how they're actually creating value for consumers. Back in 99, 2000, we had a huge bubble burst with lots of damage and lots of pretty bad things for both markets, investors, as well as the companies themselves.
Well, I'll come to the issue of value capture in just a bit, but before that, I wanted to ask you that are we in the midst of some sort of a technology bubble?
Well, if it's a bit of a bubble right now, it's being deflated, which is usually a good thing, rather than having sort of blow up at a moment's notice, which is a little bit what happened back 15 years ago when the markets weren't quite as experienced with technology kinds of concepts.
Well, you've been working in the technology space for over 2 decades now. You've seen the downturns in 2002 and also in 2008. To your mind, are we heading in the right directions in terms of the fundamentals of the companies and the kind of valuations that we are seeing and the future of the technology industry as a whole?
Well, it's a much bigger deal now. I mean, when first time I showed up at Microsoft, it was literally a startup. And so since those days, things have changed quite a bit. Back during the previous bubble, I think we were looking at technology in many ways for technology's sake. The applications were in the tech sector. The companies were internet services to a large extent, trying to do new things. Right now, we're seeing technology that's ubiquitous everywhere, every industry, every sector. And so the kinds of applications, impact, and potential is much greater. Also, the reality of what these organizations must accomplish is more complex in added real value.
Well, the point is, what is the reality? If you look at successful companies like Twitter, they have been able to create value. The governments are using Twitter for providing services to the citizens. You're seeing businesses using Twitter for marketing. But the company has actually not been able to monetize itself and is up for sale. What do you think businesses need to do to make sure that they are able to adequately monetize their products in the technology space?
No, that makes a ton of sense. No, I mean, Twitter is a great example of a company that has gotten many things right, but not everything. And one of the things that Twitter has traditionally had challenges with is after really creating this really new category of social network, then to some extent failing on execution to really drive applications that are easy to use and exciting to use, particularly for the broader kind of population. A lot of it over the years has been used by the relatively narrow part of the population, and it's been kind of cumbersome to go out there and always try to search for the things that you're interested in. It's not as simple, easy to use kind of thing. So there's tremendous potential with Twitter. There was a little bit of a challenge with execution on actually getting the application done right. And at this point in time, it's been established as something that's sort of been used for a select, somewhat smaller part of the overall market. And as such, it doesn't really have the scale to be competitive as a major social network.
Well, is there a set recipe for technology companies to be profitable? You said that there are certain things that Twitter did not do correctly. To your mind, what is it that it should have done differently to have been able to become more successful financially?
One of the great things about digital technology is that the options to monetize have increased dramatically. In the old days, I think we had very narrowly defined value creation models. Basically, you develop a product, you put a price on it, you sell it, and the customer pays the price. I think these days there's so many different ways to actually monetize because of digital technology. You can go out there and form a value capture model that is not necessarily closely linked to the value creation model. You can monetize through advertising, you can monetize by sharing leads, you can monetize by sharing critical information, or almost an infinite ways of possibilities. So it's much broader than ever before, and I think it's pretty exciting.
It has been widely accepted that technology is evolving at a faster pace than what regulators can keep pace with. Is there some advice that you can give to regulators on how they can, I'm sure they cannot predict every new development, but what is it that they could do differently?
It's a huge challenge. I mean, you see it across the board. You see it also because these new technology platforms are really powerful and they shape the lives of many, many individuals. And so platforms like Uber or Microsoft Windows or what have you have an enormous impact on society. And as a result, regulators are really interested in how they work, and it's a very important role that they play. But the problems are there across the board. Even, say, medical devices. As you put more and more software in medical devices, you have to figure out how do you prove safety and efficacy in ways that are different from traditional kinds of products in the same sector. And I think this is just a function of has to be investment in some of these organizations. They're going to have to recruit people that have better understanding of software technology and its impact on both the sort of value creation, value capture models, or also the sort of the ordinary citizens out there and how they're dealing with it. There's a lot of work to be done on this one.
Well, the other issue is there is a new term that we've been hearing of, aquakill, where larger companies have been acquiring smaller startups, and eventually the purpose is not to grow their business but to kill competition. A, is this justified? And secondly, is there something that regulators can do in this regard, or actually should they be concerned about it at all?
I think the regulatory issues are an increasing challenge, partly because of network effects are important across a variety of these businesses, which means that a number of these markets tend to tip, and so market shares tend to be very high. And so market power becomes a serious issue, and I think regulators need to think about that very carefully and become real experts at how to deal with platforms and network effects kinds of businesses.
Well, the other issue is a competition with larger competitors. Is there something that startups can do to make sure that their businesses remain viable and they do not become victims of having access to lesser amount of money than what a larger enterprise would have at its disposal?
Absolutely. I mean, I think looking at real gaps and looking at where the incentive of large companies is pointing them in different directions. I mean, the number of acquisitions made by companies like Google and Microsoft lately or Facebook is huge. And so there's an opportunity out there to really add a lot of value. And if you're really, really good at it, you might even be able to scale your own thing to an IPO. There's a lot of opportunity out there. At the same time, one also has to be realistic, which is it's hard to get something started from scratch. And so you need to be really good, really efficient in how you do it, and really focused on customer pain points that are not likely to be taken up by the larger firms.
You mentioned about how they need to identify customer pain points and they need to be smart and efficient. But we have seen in the recent past that a lot of startups fail or they do not succeed because of the kind of pressure that they receive from the venture capitalists. At what stage should these companies actually raise money from venture capitalists?
No, I think that's fair. And also there is a time dependence to the venture capital markets. That there are certain times when everybody's investing and everybody's excited investing and there's a bandwagon and everybody's throwing money in and it's easier to actually raise funds. And 2 years later, for reasons completely uncorrelated to anything that the startup might do, all of a sudden the markets are tighter and it's much harder to actually get money raised. And I think that's a real problem. And I see a lot of companies where value has been squandered in a sense by not being able to raise investment just because of broader market forces, and I think that's a real issue. This is where I think that the better venture capitalists, I think, are more experienced, are a little more able to continue to fund companies through the ups and the downs that any company is likely to have over time. And this is where, as you choose your venture capitalists, I think choosing carefully in the early days, not trying for the highest valuation you can get, but going for the people that you think you can connect the best and that will support you through not only the ups, but also the downs, is the way to go.
Well, a new venture capitalist in town is the Indian government. The government has come out with a new startup policy and it intends to invest in innovative startups. My question to you is that do you think that governments should be investing in startups at all? And if yes, what is it that they should keep in mind?
Well, in a country like India, I think we have billions, literally, of talented people with incredibly deep engineering, technical backgrounds, with huge entrepreneurial spirit, I think it makes sense for government to go out there and help drive this entrepreneurial spirit in the country, and invest in the kinds of ventures and the kinds of companies that can drive growth and prosperity in the environment. The level of skill and the level of excitement in the country about technology is first class and should be rewarded. At the same time, just with everything, one needs to execute this well. And governments are not always the best at executing things. But if it's done carefully and it's done right, I think it can have a huge impact.
Well, can you think of any other government at the top of your mind which has had a similar policy and has been successful?
Well, there are lots of examples of the government. For example, in the U.S., where the government investments have been directly or indirectly responsible for tremendous economic growth. Even the creation of the internet originally was an ARPA project funded by government in different ways. It's been a little trickier in the U.S. especially, as I'm aware, for government to invest in specific ventures. There's too much potential for imperfect information or strange conflicts to arise and things like that. But investing in a general space, a general technology area, absolutely is.
Before I let you go, Professor Iansiti, I had one last question. What would be your advice to the Indian government, to the startups, particularly in light of the fact that you are on the board of directors of several startup companies, which are doing relatively well?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's, first of all, not worry about any individual investment, worry about the portfolio of investments, and so take some risks, take investments in organizations that might have an impact on India, on fostering the ecosystem of innovation in the local country, that might have a particular level of interest and excitement in attracting and motivating the engineering population, driving the young talent to new heights, and also incubating investment in industry in sectors that may be a little bit underdeveloped in India with respect to other parts of the world, especially given the level of the talent that is present.
Wonderful, Professor Iansiti. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for your time.
Pleasure of mine. Thank you.
Well, we were in conversation with Professor Marco Iansiti, the head of Harvard Business School's Digital Initiative and the chairman of Keystone Strategy, Inc. Thank you for watching.